Good afternoon and welcome back to the Nip and a Half podcast 25-26 season. I hope the tech is working. I'm a bit rusty. I just went to go live and hadn't opened YouTube, so hopefully we're good. But let us know if not in the chat. It would be great. For anyone new watching, my name is Fergi and this is Paul McNulty. This is I think we're into our third season now, Paul. I think is that right? I think we're into our third season, Nip and a Half. But welcome everyone. Welcome, Paul. How was your summer, Paul? Interesting one, or just regular old summer for you?
I love the fact that you are coming across like you weren't at my wedding for the viewers, from the viewers' perspective. Had a great summer so far. I did get married, and you were there. I've had quite a nice break from fantasy football. And usually I'm dreading the summer if there's no tournament football on. But no, I've had a nice break, but now very much eager to get back into it.
Indeed. Looks like we might have a small lag on your video, Paul, which is not your fault. It's my warm laptop, which has happened in these summer months, but hopefully it's palatable for everyone. Josh Wilkinson does ask, is Paul in a sauna? You haven't actually gone on honeymoon yet, have you, Paul? You're going in a week or two. You're going during game week 1, is that right?
That's right. At
least you're showing more commitment to your bride than you are to fantasy football.
Yeah, well, she was talking about doing like an hour of me looking after her daughter, then an hour of her looking after the daughter. So I just need to make sure that timing is right with the cut-off times for the fantasy football deadlines.
Indeed. Welcome everyone in the chat. Great to have you back. Viney62 is in. He says, welcome back. A few changes in all fantasy formats. We're definitely going to, I think we'll probably, in all fairness, spend the majority of this pod looking at the changes, look at what it means for the games, and our sort of early thoughts on how it's going to impact our strategy. Bobby Shearer is in. Josh is in. Wiz, Brownie, Sky FF. Great to see you back, Brownie. Cloudy, Sky Fantasy Football. Ian is back. And Chris Harvey is in as well. Great to have you all with us this evening. So Paul, what do you want to talk about first? I mean, what a summer! I haven't quite known a summer with so much changes to the fantasy games. I suppose. Where do you want to start, and what are your initial thoughts?
There's a combination, because there is a lot of exciting changes in fantasy football, and I think there's a lot of excitement about the Premier League this year as well. I feel that all the teams have strengthened near the top. It's maybe unfortunate that Newcastle and Villa haven't kicked on transfer wise, and financial fair play probably obstructing them more than any other team, considering those are the ones that are breaking into what was the original traditional top 4, top 5 sides. But interesting title race. I think it's when you've got the favourites, I think it's Liverpool just now at 2-1, then it's wide open. So that's great, and a lot of great signings. And today Gyökeres's transfer through Arsenal's went through, and I think it's been well publicised and well thought from everybody that was the one area where they were weak before, and they've strengthened there as well. So from an actual footballing perspective and spectacle, I think it's could be kind of one of the most exciting seasons yet from Premier League position.
Yeah, we've spoken about in the last season or two, haven't we, how a lot of the sort of mid-table and even lower table sides have strengthened in terms of the quality of their players, and how all of those teams have got a talisman or their own sort of superstar, however you want to call it. But it seems that a lot of them have moved to the bigger clubs this year, and it's continued, and may continue. Even Eze linked to Arsenal, for example, and stuff. So it's really interesting how there's been so much more signings from inside the Premier League this year. Not all, but a lot. There's been a lot of good players from the sort of middle tables or traditional mid-table teams have moved up, which is interesting. I suppose in the short term for the Premier League, it's maybe not great, because I suppose it could lopside the table a touch. But also, I think that in terms of the longevity of the Premier League, it's good because it's clear that these teams, either through their academy or through their, shrewd scouting, are picking up really, really good players that can make it right to the top. So, I think it makes for a really interesting season. And it's tough picking a team this year. I think in all formats, I personally think, I'm not sure about you. I think Dream Team, I'm finding it quite hard to find an affordable 11. I think on FPL and Telegraph, it's more I think the player pool, for me anyway, has increased from your usual 20 to 25 to maybe like 40 players. You can pick any 11 of those 40 and you've still got a very, very good team. And so much unknowns with people like, Etikite, Gyökeres, Wirtz, who are coming in with huge reputations in prime positions, who we would normally pick out those number 9s or number 10s from Liverpool or Arsenal, but we don't know too much about them, how they're going to adapt. So I think it's fascinating this year.
Yeah. You want to start on Dream Team then? That was the one that you signalled out as being different to the other two.
I think so, just in terms of, I think the other two, I found it, well, I say that, I haven't gone for Salah or Haaland in either FPL or TFF either, but I found in Dream Team, I found it quite tough to get a decent-ish 11. So I've done a draft. It doesn't mean very much at the moment. I may as well run through it. But I've gone for Areola for West Ham in goal. I've obviously gone for the mixture of the potential early Carabao Cup matches in game week 2. But obviously you don't want to go completely all in on those. Actually, no. We should start on the transfer changes. Sorry, we should start on the changes, shouldn't we? Because that's obviously sets the context. Do you want to run through your understanding of the changes in Dream Team?
Yeah, well, they've fixed what was I liked the transfer setup in general when they launched the new version of the Dream Team game rather than the 5 per month. You got 2 per week, but it never ever made sense that you would lose a transfer by only using one of the 2 transfers anyway. So what they've allowed now is up to 6 transfers, and you can roll transfers onto the next stage as well, which I think makes the same made perfect sense. And then they've introduced a substitute rule which you can use. What was it, 5 times this season?
5 times a season, yeah.
5 times a season, and instead of the goal booster, right? That's one that they've lost.
I don't think so, have they? Unless I've missed.
I thought they got rid of one of the chips. Maybe I could have come better prepared for this.
Same for me. I thought they retained the chips. And this was an additional one. So please let us know in the chat, those who actually know what they're talking about in the chat about this. But I'm pretty sure they've retained the chips.
I might be wrong. I guess I've not got any views of using any of the boosters that early in the season. Exactly. That maybe it didn't matter in the way that I was thinking about. But how the substitute works is, if your player hasn't played yet, but the team that player has played, i.e. if the person's suspended, or I guess a last minute injury that you've not known about, would be a perfect case of something that you can't really plan for. You can take that player out and replace them from a player, obviously it fits formation and fits value within your team, and then pick up points from there, and then they would default back to the original position the following week. There's ways in which you can manipulate that rule as well, that if your player was suspended for one game and you knew that they were going to be suspended, then you could take them out knowing that they would be back for the following week as well. So there's ways in which you can do that. So this opens up many a tactic, I guess, from the transfer, the ruling of up to 6 transfers, because whilst I think last year it didn't really come out to too much fruition in terms of needing the budget on the squad, because a lot of the big players got injured at various different times
was a
of the
massive
season.
one, wasn't he?
And Haaland as well, right? Yeah. Whereas if you look at the pricing, like you've alluded to already, I think they've got the pricing spot on this year. Like done a really good job. They've moved the base up as well, so there's no 1 million goalkeepers that could accidentally fall into favour. Like Muric was 1 million last year, and if you look at the midfielder, Tim from from Everton, who I picked up early doors as well. They've removed that and increased the base to 2 million from there. So even your defensive midfielders are 2 million minimum. So it's definitely making it harder that you can go for 10 top players. And I've had a look through all the teams that are playing in Europe as well, kind of one by one, and they've increased the base on all of those players up to a higher level as
Oh
well.
wow, 100%.
When I look at the defensive options from Forest, who I know had a great season last year, but Palace as well. The base is much higher than it was previously. So even picking up maybe some of the less fashionable players, but those that consistently play for those teams is also difficult.
Yeah, it's I just checked, and all the boosters are still there. So we have got 3 boosters plus we've got the substitute. So there's a lot of potential, a lot of interaction in terms of the transfers. We've obviously got these 3 chips plus these 5 times. So that's, we're going to be using one of these chips or one of these, substitutes basically once a month on average over the season. So my initial instinct on all of these is, I don't think in hindsight, obviously the year before last when they had the big at the back chip, that was huge and sort of out of kilter of the sort of strength of that chip needed significant planning. You would plan for it weeks in advance. My initial thoughts on my strategy for all these chips, including the substitutes, is going to be I think use it as and when. I've got no plan to use any of them immediately at all in the first sort of opening game weeks, unless something happens, right? As you say, you find that your captain is injured and your vice has only scored a couple of points, so you may use substitutes then. But I think it's very much going to be a sort of as and when. And just thinking back, I think there were so many times towards the end of the season, or in the second half of the season anyway, when I'd wish I hadn't used my chips so early, because I do feel like, and we touched on this, and I think it's bigger in Dream Team than any other game. Momentum in Dream Team is so key, and I think we felt it last season, didn't we? I had a really big momentum shift, sort of November, December. You then took it over from me from January through to March, for example, and then I took it back over then from April to May. That was how our ding dong sort of went. And you can just feel it, can't you? You can feel you're a move behind or you're a move ahead and whatever else. And I just think when you get into that position, I think I would prefer, unless it's a real huge obvious opportunity, just prefer to use my chips and get those extra points around that point where a lot of your mini leagues are not set, but you get to a point, in my view anyway, from sort of February or March onwards, where it's actually quite difficult to get any gains or to make massive moves. And I think these could be the things that can actually get you that extra 10 or 15 points, which can sweep up the rankings. But yeah, I mean, it's really early. These are very, very initial thoughts, and it could prove to be different. So,
Keeper's a difficult one, and Dream Team as well. Again, they've raised the base too much, and you look at cheap options just now. I know they've not priced the new Leeds keeper that they just signed from Lyon, and the other 2 Leeds keepers are 2 million. So maybe that could be an option. You've mentioned Areola there. I imagine that West Ham will look to replace him.
Yes, so.
He looked really poor against Man United, but if he is first choice at the start of the season, based on West Ham's fixtures, then maybe he is viable. But yeah, I've had difficulty there. I was going to pick the Sunderland keeper, but they were all they had quite a strong team out against Hearts at the weekend. They got beat 3-0. I don't know, it's only a friendly, but the goalie was injured as well. So Patterson, who was first choice at the end of last season, wasn't in goals at the weekend, and Craig Gordon's testimonial. So yeah, it's something that to think about in terms of what we're picking there. Is there any players that you think in Dream Team are kind of like a must-have, or rather are locked in your team
at the moment? If I just run through my team, just and I'll call out, but I don't think so. Again, I'm trying to get away from FOMO and FPL, but on Dream Team, I'm not saying it's FOMO, but I do think there is a game within a game in Dream Team because there's so many good players who you can't let get away from you. It's almost worth playing the game within a game in Dream Team personally because of the high stakes on captaincy. I think that's the reason why on Dream Team is different. But so I think Salah is probably the only one who I'm kind of waver. I don't really want to pick him because I think you can go against him. But my team at the moment are Areola, De Kuyper from Brighton, who's this new attacking left back who looks to be nailed. I've gone from O'Brien from Everton just for again a lot. He's a Carabao, right? And because they're cheap, and Cucurella from Chelsea, but Chelsea do look like they're signing a new left back, so that may be a risk there. But I still think he starts the season. I still think if he starts the season, because obviously the Chelsea players were late back because of the Club World Cup. Palmer, Wirtz. I do like the look of Njai from Everton as a midfielder. He's on pens as well. Nailed, I think. I think he looks decent given the Carabao. And I've just gone for a 4 million placeholder at the moment in Diallo. I think was he a forward last year or the year before?
Yeah, he was a forward last year.
But I do think if he does make that place his own at 4 million, he could be okay. There are decent options. And a front three then of Bowen, obviously the sort of West Ham, Sunderland first week and Carabao influence there. João Pedro, I did pick this team a week or two ago, so it's not like a sort of massive up-to-date draft. And Salah captain then. I don't think, looking at it, maybe Palmer, maybe Salah. I think you can go against a lot of the other players. I haven't given any consideration yet to Gyökeres or Etikite because they weren't in the game when I picked them, but I do think both of them are quite favourably priced. My only thing with Arsenal is
Gyökeres is 6 million. I think
6.
I don't think that. I don't think in the long term that he's overpriced, but maybe to begin with, I don't know. Like unless there was assurances over, he definitely starts first game of the season.
But even then, they're away to United, which is going to be a tough game, right? I think they got Leeds at home, which is nice, and then away to Liverpool with no Carabao. So I'm almost seeing it as a mini sort of window there of who's got the 4 games, 2 at home, good fixtures, and because we can save the transfers, you kind of hope as well to be able to save 1 or 2 going into that period, and then obviously switching around your non-European players for European players. But obviously, there's a massive impact here. I know me and you are really big on this, which again we're not so much in the other formats. So well, FPL obviously, but getting your budget up is key in this format, and I think it's helped us massively over the last 2 years on really focusing on that. When you can take out someone falling 0.3 to a rising 0.3, especially a player who don't want to let get away from you too much. Say if say Kirk starts in game week 1, what is he, 4.5 or 5? Say he gets a 12 pointer or something, and all of a sudden he's rising to 5.3, and I've got O'Brien from Everton who's going down 0.3. That's a tough pill to sort of let go for many reasons. Yeah. So what are your initial thoughts on that? Are you still gonna, because I think it's easy to say I'm going to save all my transfers back and then just I'm going to save 6 transfers back and then go into the first international break with 6 transfers in hand. Whoopie-doo. Would you do that if it was costing you, and it could cost you 3 million, 4 million?
Well, there's that, and there's the balancing of, like, I don't know how many players I think will, or there's any assurances of picking players that's going to start the Carabao Cup as well. But I have got kind of one eye on that. So alongside those players that you'd mentioned, I think McNeil was kind of one of the unsung heroes in the game last year as well, and he's similarly priced as well. So if he could, if he gets any minutes in that with Everton's favourable start to the season, he could be another great option trying to build up some budget as well. So it is definitely finding that right balance though, because I think it's game week 3 that the European football kicks in now, with the fact that you've got the extended games in this group stage and in the Champions League and the Europa League and Conference League as well. So I want to find the balance between half my players I'm not having to worry about having to bring in later. You mentioned Salah and Palmer being kind of two of the prime examples, and kind of like a sprinkling of players that would play the Carabao. And I'm pretty open to what you've suggested there. Like, I don't know that I would go chasing Kerkez in the scenario that you've suggested, but if there was another smaller priced like player that's then going to go up point three that kind of had a favourable start and then might play the Carabao, maybe use him like a transfer in that
Yeah, it's a
scenario
good
would
show.
be more linked to what I'd be looking to do. Also, yeah, but I also don't want to be messing about I messed about with keepers too much last year in this game, and every time I did it, I was getting gains off it, but then the following week it seemed to negate back straight away. So I want to try and avoid that this year.
Yeah, so it's going to be interesting. And obviously, over the next 2 weeks, we will refine our plans down. Probably by next week, we'll be able to give a reasonable first draft. But I say there's so much going on still in terms of transfers. There's hardly any friendlies being played. It's quite difficult to say. But I suppose in summary, my early strategy is probably to say, I don't like while I welcome the changes, I think it's going to be easier said than done to save a load of transfers back. Because if you do, you're very likely going to be losing millions week on week, which is
Yeah.
not going to help in the sort of medium and long term. Should we touch on Telegraph? It's fresh in my mind. Obviously launched today, and some big changes there. They haven't made changes on Telegraph for a while. I think a few years. I think was it 2016 they introduced
They
the
made some changes after. Like, they did make some changes with 3 or 4 seasons back
oh yeah
with
the tackle
the
bonus and,
tackle.
and keeper bonus. Sorry, yeah, you're
Yeah.
right. But yeah, the major changes, as hopefully everyone has seen now, is 5 extra transfers, so up to 45 transfers, which is quite high. Well, sorry, highest is higher. But the more probably strategic change they've made is introducing the Carabao Cup, which we just mentioned. Which I mean, I'm personally a real fan of both the changes. I like the fact that you can. I just feel like the more interactions you have with your fantasy team, the more reflective your rank is at the end of the season of how you've performed. The more skill I feel is involved, is the more the more interactions you have. And I do like the fact that there's this potential. We're going to see right there will be one or two or more fixtures on that Tuesday night, on the 26th of August, where if Eze, for example, is still playing for Palace, right? Hang on, Paz is a bad example because they're in Europe. But there will be an example. So say Brentford are not in Europe, and say Vis is still playing for them, and they're home to Morecambe, and Vis is starting. I do think it adds a great deal of interest into the game there, and I think there will be a lot more of that. And I think it's easy to forget. And those who played Dream Team last year will recognise that. I think the sentiment at the moment amongst Telegraph managers is that no one plays the early rounds. But I know from last year, I remember Palace, which is why I mentioned Eze, is a prime example. I think Mateta and Eze in particular benefited a lot. They were superb picks early on the season because they played basically full strength in the Carabao. And there was a lot of other teams that did as well. So I do think there's going to be opportunity there. I suppose the more strategic question is whether you take that into account when you're picking your game week 1 teams or not. So they're the changes. What are your thoughts, Paul?
Yeah, very very similar to you. Like I encourage the changes because even as a spectacle and give me an interest in early League Cup rounds
Exactly.
is part of the reason why I love Dream Team. Anyway, so the fact that they're introducing that, I think is a good thing. And similarly, I'm not going to take too much consideration for League Cup into my starting thoughts on Telegraph, but the fact that we will be able to see the lineups might encourage me to use 1 or 2 transfers. But I'd only do that in a scenario because I got burnt trying to attempt this tactic in FA Cup last year on it, is if the player is someone that's in the strongest 11 for the league as well. So it's not
Yeah,
like
exactly.
so it's not a short term. So it's not a short term move. It's a long term move. So I will make take that into consideration as well.
And there could be opportunities. Obviously, we'll know nearer the time when the fixtures are released, etc. But there could be that it turns out to be a 3-0. There could be if you include that game, because if the team is playing last on a Sunday, Carabao midweek, first on a Saturday, which is reasonably unlikely, but there could end up being a 3-0 there, for example, or a 4-1, or whatever it would be. And it's and the fixtures fall, right. So 2 of the 3 fixtures are at home. The team's playing well. The player's a good player. It would almost be quite foolish to just disregard it just because you didn't like the rule. For example, there will be certain opportunities. It's just whether it's whether we are playing a long game or whether it's looking to make short-term games. But say, for example, Brentford played last on the Sunday. They have a plum home fixture midweek. I know you don't see the lineup before that, but you could also get like a 3-1 from the Carabao fixture as well, for example.
Yeah,
it's going to be interesting. What are your thoughts? Have you had much of a look at the player list? Or
well, I know the hub had been involved in kind of giving some feedback on the early provisional lists and such like. So I had a look at the players' positions and price, and then I think it's good for the game that they've like moved some of the players back from forwards back into midfielders. So like Semenyo, Rogers, amongst others that are now midfielders again. And whilst it looks like it could make a game easier in terms of bringing these players in, I think that opens up the player pool more and therefore should give a bit more diversity. Maybe depending on pricing, say some of these players might become a lock, but I do certainly favour that because I would just ignore a lot of the forwards in the game last season just because it was too restrictive and how that was set up. In general, I think the pricing's okay. Just maybe a couple of gems that I think stand out to begin with.
Yeah, there's a few accessible, very cheap defenders I've noticed. Sort of early twos who will play. The first I know, I think Truffett for Bournemouth, he's 2.3. I think he's he looks a really good option. I'm sure there's more. I've only had one very quick glance this afternoon since the game was on live just to sling together a quick 11, but I do feel there are plenty of opportunities. There's lots of value players. I think they've priced all the new players reasonably well, so you have to think about them. You didn't want to, I don't know, Ekatike coming in at 3.8 million or something, right? So I think I think they've priced it reasonably well. I've built an 11 again without Salah or Haaland because I don't feel that the fixtures are incredible for them. I'll just run through it just to see what kind of team you can get. Gone for Raya in goal. I think he's 4.4, which I think is a good price. I think Aina is underpriced at 3.2 million. Murillo you can get for 3.1. Milenkovic is 3.3. I think they're all quite cheap. Lewis Hall, 3.2 million. I think he's very cheap. Again, he was 2.8 last year, and I think at one point he was like everyone's team one. Just before he got injured, he had that. He had was it 3 assists in one game or something just before he got injured. So I think he's really good value. I think Munoz again, so he's my third. He's quite cheap again. I think I want to say 3.3 or 3.4, maybe 3.5, but he looks really good again. But you can look 3.7. Sorry, you can look all around that area, and there's lots and lots of options. I'm glad they bumped up Kirkes. I think he's 4.1 now, but he was super cheap. In that first list, and he could be a game breaker, right? It seems Van Dijk is 5.2. If Kirk and Robertson was 5.5. So if Kirkes does get in, take that left back spot, and performs like Robertson, I mean, he could be an absolute steal. So I'm glad they've upped his price. Midfield at the moment of Rogers 3.8, which I think is very cheap. Eze 4.6, 4.7. I think it's probably reasonable. If he goes to Arsenal and he starts, which I would expect, he could be a bit of a gem in there. Palmer 6.2. You could have Bruno at 6.4 as well, who I think is maybe decent as well. And Wirtz is 5.1. I just like to see him in my team at the moment, just because I've not seen him in there before. I think he's reasonably priced 5.1 for a new player. And then a front three, a very unorthodox front three, but three who I think all will have very good seasons. I like number 9s up front, and I've gone for 3 number 9s in Solanke, Ekitike. Obviously, a lot depends what happens with Isak there, and Gyökeres as well. Gyökeres came in at 5.1, I think. Ekitike, hang on, I'm probably wrong with that. 5.6.
5.7.
Sorry, 7.
Yeah.
Ekitike was 5.1, I think. And Solanke was 4.9. So I think all those players, I like having the number 9s for bigger teams. I think...
And disregarding Haaland. Disregarding
Haaland, just because, he is super expensive. You could easily downgrade a couple of players, right? You could downgrade Palmer or Wirtz and Munoz to a 2 million defender and like a cheap midfielder and get Haaland in, but just not so sure that they're as essential in this game as I'd be interested. What do you think on Liverpool, on Salah mainly, because I can't make my mind up whether the changes to the team are going to help him, hinder him, or whether he's going to remain on the same sort of level.
I read a thread about slot evolving Liverpool, and sort of something they'd done at Feyenoord before as well, and how that might change position so that Salah could be more central and almost like pairing in a partnership rather than like hugging the touchline, and would you get more longevity out of him on that basis as well. So that's obviously with limited games or analysis that's happening, but it's more the profile of players, because if you look at Luis Diaz, traditional winger on the other side, getting sold, that maybe this does lead to that view as well.
I think if that's the case,
I'm with you. He had to put into the season, and he is 33 now. But
is he 33?
Is that not what Salah? Is that not what Salah does?
Yeah, anyway, he does.
Like he always has him and Haaland always have an explosive start to the season, and then somewhat tail off. So I don't know. I'm similar to you in that I'm not that high on him, but also something that you said towards the end of last season when we were retrospectively looking at things. It's when you've got players that are that explosive, that are that highly owned at the start of the season, are you almost betting against yourself to begin with, which is something consideration. I know that, this sounds ridiculous, and we'll talk about FPL in a minute. I know that like you're heavily invested from Green Arrow perspective and the hub itself, that you care less as a player of the game in FPL than you do in other two, and therefore I could see you not picking him in that, but fully justified. Whereas in the two games where you have a more long-standing passion for, I think you'd be more disappointed if you were trailing behind in those games by not picking someone with that high ownership at the start, on the basis that you did say that as well last season.
And that's exactly where I'm leaning, to be honest.
Yeah.
But I also think, and this is part of the reason why I picked Ekitike and Wirtz rather than going for one or none of the Liverpool attacking assets, because you would guess that if Salah banged in a hat-trick in game week 1, that the other two would be heavily involved and may even score a couple themselves, But like I say, it's easy now to say. I like to go without Haaland and Salah early on, just to see kind of what it can do. I can't see at the moment who's going to play on that left-hand side. I have seen different sort of graphics on, Wirtz will play there, or if I don't know if Isak comes and Ekitike will play there, and so I'm just not convinced by all that. I got to be honest. I'm not quite sure what's happening on that left hand side. And to your point, maybe they're building their new team around the fact that they are going to change the way they play, and and change the formation and maybe play Wirtz in behind Ekitike and Salah, or have Salah in the 10 or wherever it is. So we'll just have to see obviously how it plays out over the coming week, and obviously we'll have massive clues in the Community Shield as well, which is 2 weeks yesterday, I think, whenever it is. So it's going to be super interesting, and again, we'll come back next week with a draft each, and maybe a bit more structure around how we're going to start the season. Bear in mind, the game did launch about 4 hours ago, so yeah. FPL, which has obviously seen the biggest shakedown in living memory.
See if you'd presented these changes to me last year at this time, I'd have been like, game's gone, this is ridiculous, you're losing all your edge. And then how boring the game was last year, and everybody forming the same template. I'm embracing the chaos that this brings, and I was like, so I think it's refreshing from that standpoint, where people might deem it helps the casual. I'm not massively a fan of that term anyway, but more leveling the play field and keeping playing field and keeping people engaged and stuff like that. But the fact that I felt that the game was so stagnant anyway, and what they tried to do with the assistant managership was naff.
It was dreadful, wasn't it? Wasn't it just so poor? It offered nothing to the game. I even think personally that, I mean, I did okay over it. I was probably in like the 50 or 60% sort of percentile in it. I had Slot who did well and whatever else. But even if I'd have, even if you'd have had the optimal, I can't remember where it was, Moyes, Glasner, whoever. It's just like, I don't think it meant like, even now, no one really talks about that today. They still talk about the players that did it, and the strategies and the chips and the free hit 34. No one says, assistant manager was the thing which really won me my league. And glad it's gone.
And in most seasons, the chip strategy is so rigid, and I mean that by, when the big double game weeks are coming because of the FA Cup postponement, so everybody just leaves their chips and does it on those weeks anyway. I'd rather, and whilst you could put this down to tactic or the increased element of luck in it or whatever, but the fact that people will be playing chips now more in single game weeks, I think again adds to the kind of variety of tactic that you can deploy in this.
Well, in the first half, we're going to have to use them, right? We did a sort of members only hub stream last week, and we were thinking on the fly, Rich and I. But I think one of the things as we were just discussing it through, especially the double chips, was that if you play traditional FPL going into game week 1, 2, 3, and even wildcards in 4, which is very early, you could realistically be sat at 6, 7, 8 million. Because so many people, both casuals and engaged managers, are going to go bang, bang, bang with their chips, right? Rightly or wrongly. But I just don't fancy a season starting with game week 4 at 7 or 8 million, just playing catch up all season.
Yeah.
I mean, how boring would that be, And you'd probably end up doing okay, right? But I'm really tempted, mate, just to go almost all in on the chips early doors. I know bench boost game week 1 has been mooted, and I think at the moment, I mentioned this in the Green Arrow in the members only Green Arrow last week. I think there's a distinct part. I haven't changed my mind nearly a week later, but I'm contemplating going bench boost game week 1, potential for free hit in game week 2, because you'd have 11 home players game week 1, 11 home players in game week 2. You obviously just play game week 3 as normal, because it would be your game week 1 home players again. And wildcards in game week 4, because you're going to know quite a lot around starting 11s. Is Gokaresh playing? Is Ekiti? Is Isaac signed? Or all these sorts of unknowns. It sounds madness. It does. But then
it's not really though, because like, if in the first half of the season there's very few double game weeks, if any, like, anyway. So it's not like and that's when people save the chips for you, traditionally.
This is it. So, if I do that, I'd like to think that if I did those 3 chips there, probably I'd like to think I'd be maybe 30, 40 points ahead of a non-chip playing manager. Potentially, maybe not that many. Probably in a range between, 10 to 15 if it goes really poorly, and maybe 40 or 50 if it goes incredibly well. If my free hit smashes it in game week 2, for example, and all the home teams don't. But imagine going into game week 4 wildcard with a completely fresh team, being in the top few 100k, and how exciting that would be, rather than being in 7 million and just having an upward slog for the whole season. I mean, I can't think of anything worse. So, very, very early thoughts, but something I'm giving serious consideration to. Will do probably for the coming weeks. Have you thought of any kind of strategy at the moment? Or?
I have contemplated bench boost in game one only because I think that that's the one that restricts you the most, because you're always
plan for
trying to have the squad for it, whereas afterwards you don't need to worry about it, and therefore your transfers can be not backing you in a corner almost. So potentially, but obviously not locked to anything. A couple other points on the changes. So the defensive contributions and the limit on it to 2 points, I think, is a very sensible addition to the game and opens up your player pool considerably.
Yeah.
If you look at Elliot Anderson, I think is one of the bigger, like Elliot Anderson in midfield and Tarkovsky in defence are 2 of the biggest benefactors of it. Now, defence is always a case, like they're always the lowest scoring players in the game, so therefore adding something that makes them more attractive is sensible. But not only that, FPL have thought about the pricing of those players with that effective change in place. Like Tarkovsky is like 5.5 million, which so again I think is excellent. Like they've done a really good job of thinking it right through to the end rather than coming with something in the fly, throwing it out there, see if it works. Like they've adapted the game to benefit that as well. So for what I think is a game that I'm not. Does it add to my excitement level? Well, it certainly brings it up from the position I was at the end of the season. Not that that was difficult, but I would add that it's still the game that I'm least excited about, but it's brought up from the floor of where I think I was.
Seller. No, I completely agree. I think when you play all these formats, you do see that FPL scoring is so binary in it. You only ever see this, 6, 2, 5, or whatever it is, and you've got to get an attacking return to score anything. And a player can play really, really, really well, have a storm of a game, and get nothing and things. Yeah. So I think this does level it out. I still think there's more they can do. I still think that the Dream Team in particular have a very, very sort of reflective scoring matrix that reflects how your player has played overall towards their points, whereas I still don't feel that's really the way in FPL, but
yeah. Well, they've got this Dream Team's by far got the strongest points per million when you're thinking about the players and bringing it in. Their pricing structure is like spot on. I think that there's they've done a fantastic job.
I think Milenkovic is a lock for me in game week 1. I know he's not like massively popular, which I'm very surprised at, but given the fact that they got 2 home games in 3, he's got a lot of attacking threat. He scored really highly on the defensive bonus stuff last year, and he's 5.5. I think he's definitely in my team as it stands. Solanke, really liked. I'm just excited about Spurs. Maybe I'm a little bit biased as a Spurs fan. I wouldn't say Solanke's an absolute lock, but he's as close as. Other than that, as I kind of touched on earlier, it's probably about 30, 40 players who I'm looking at. My current team, which is not set up for a bench boost, but it was just to see what I can do with 100 million without Salah or Haaland. Sells in goal with a 4 million defender. Then Milenkovic, Cucurella, and Kerkez. That was based on the fact that if Kerkez does start at left back, then I think it'd be good. I had Vert again. This shows how long ago I did this draft. I had Verts, Luis Diaz, but that was like an 8 million sort of placeholder. At that point, they weren't sure if he was going. It looks like he's going now, so that will have to go. Kudus, Palmer, Marmouche, and a Luis Diaz 8 million shaped hole. And our front three of João Pedro, Chris Wood, and Solanke. Probably going to ship out Luis Diaz for Anderson, especially if I'm playing a bench boost, because I think he'll do well in game week 1 and 3. I'll probably play him in 3 as well. Probably have to get rid of Sells then. Maybe Wood, I'm not sure. But yeah, I think again, if you don't go for Salah and Haaland, I think Salah home to Bournemouth game week 1, the first game Friday night. You don't want to be rocking up
highly capped.
You don't want to be rocking up on the Saturday morning at 10 million. So again, it's that
he always does well in the first game of the season. I know that's. I always find that.
Oh, of course.
Those types of things a bit iffy because it's not like.
Yeah. But Bournemouth have lost most of their defence, haven't they, as well, and stuff. And while I still think Bournemouth are a really good team, it's going to be so hard to go without Salah. I really hope Isak doesn't go to Liverpool, because I really like the look of Ekitike at 8.5 million, and I think if Isak does go, I think it make the game really hard. I think you're going to have to choose between Isak and Salah. I don't think you can have them both if you want to have balance elsewhere, and it just makes Ekitike a non-option, really, doesn't it? I keep saying Ekitike. It's Etikite. I need to learn that ahead of this season. It's ET, not EK, I think. But yeah, any initial thoughts on players? Any locks for you or?
No, I think Rodgers at 7 million. I think a lot of people will be put off by him because he was 5 million last year. But I really like Villa's opening fixtures,
decent, and
I think I'd say this is an unpopular opinion. I probably actually don't think it is going to be that unpopular, but I've just got that sense that something's not right at Newcastle, and I think I think Villa might batter them in the first day of the season.
Really? Wow, okay, that's interesting. Yeah, maybe Watkins and Rodgers could be the ones if Watkins is still there. That would be because they've got decent fixtures on the game week 1 and game week 3 as well. They got decent fixtures at home again, so maybe that is the one who just didn't stuff. Yeah, just the other rules on FPL, obviously being a bit more generous with the assists. I think they called it assist simplification. I think it would have been easier just to go with Opta, but at least they are sort of enhancing the enhancing the potential for assist scoring there. No predicted points. No assistant manager. Yeah, excited for it, and I think it's gonna be swingy, chaotic. I think there's gonna be strategies everywhere, and I think I think I'm reasonably. I'm probably 60%, 70% set at the moment on doing that 1, 2, 3, 4. But I feel if you don't, then you can almost play the chips as it falls into your lap rather than making a plan. I mean, there's no point in saying I'm going to bench boost in game week 9 when you're in game week 2. It doesn't make any sense. I just think you're going to look at your team one week and go, oh my goodness, I can bench boost here. That's really good. And the same for most of them. The same for even for free hit. I think the only one you can maybe preempt is triple captain, because you can say, oh, Salah's home to whoever leads on game week 12 or whatever else. But I think the other 3, it's going to be really hard to preempt. I always think fixture swings are overrated for wild cards. I don't think it ever really works out like that. But I think this year in FPL, I've had a dreadful record recently in FPL, and I think a big part of that for me is FOMO and not playing my own game. I've been sort of just always being one step behind the template. I mean, can you think of a worse place to play?
Yeah.
So I really think that getting excited by this going bench boost, free hit 3, wildcard 4, getting myself hopefully in a strong position with still triple captain in hand. Obviously, we've got the AFCON transfers coming in. We haven't mentioned them yet in game week 16. as a kind of fallback as well. I mean, even if I go into game week 4 or 5 with a fresh wildcard team at 500,000, and then there are people playing chips all around me, I almost like not having the stress then as well of having to plan of when I'm going to use my chips. I think I'm probably more 80% now on doing that. But yeah, it's going to be interesting.
Couple of things from me before we start wrapping this up. One, FF stuff on a new site now.
Yeah,
it's
called notonlyfpl.co.uk.
And we'll be running our league table for Nip and a Half from there. Anyone that's listening, that's interested, there's a payment option, so like paid league, but similarly, anyone's free to join. And just a bit of background on it, we just take the average, like to weight the games evenly, which is even more imperative when you've got rule changes season on season. We play it almost like a Mario Kart style, where it's your average league position across the 3 leagues, and then whoever has the best average league position at the end of it is the winner. Johnny Curry won that last season, so that league is available, and we don't need to manually update it, which is brilliant from Mike and his team, and so that's available. And also, I don't know if you've had the chance to look at it, but I registered a cloud fantasy football team at the weekend, and the interface that Ian and Mike FF stuff has worked on is incredible. Like, they have done a fantastic job on it, and the pricing is on point as well. Like, whilst you and I share our admiration of the Dream Team game in particular now, and kind of we're old school Telegraph players, and always comment on how much we enjoy that game, but it really replicates the Sky game very, very close. And I would argue some of the rule changes, that the minor tweaks that they've made to rule changes is actually better than what, some of the rules that were there before. So I'd encourage everybody to play. I think the game, the longevity of that game will only be based on how people are engaging with it. And I don't know, there's a couple of cash mini leagues around as well, from really reliable chairmen. So I'd encourage anybody that's listening that's not yet given it a shot to register a team there.
Indeed. And Ian is in the chat. Cloudy Sky Fantasy Football Show. If you look for that on YouTube, he does a show, I think on a Friday. But yeah, Cloud FF looks superb, and especially if you like the Sky game, absolutely brilliant. So yeah, go and sign up and play on there. Just a big shout out as usual. We have in terms of our planners and everything on the hub. All the usual stuff to do well at DreamTeam, Telegraph, FPL. I'll be doing my team reveals on the hub for hub members from Game Week 1. I know, Paul, you do a lot of writing for us on the Telegraph as well. We'll be doing a Telegraph pod on this channel with Luke and Carl. Also, last year's winner, Johnny Curry, will be coming on as well in the next fortnight. So that will be before Game Week 1. We tried to leave it quite close to the deadline because we obviously want as much insight there as possible, but we'll be doing that. And yeah, just head over to the hub. If you're not a member already, it's 50% off if you use the link below, and join our WhatsApp groups, right, for Dream Team, Telegraph, FPL. Me and Paul are in all of them, as are all the best managers in the world in all formats, and it can get pretty crazy and hectic with all the chat. It's absolutely superb stuff. So make sure you join if you're not a hub member. I think that'll do for our first one, Paul. I say we'll be back next week and back pre Game Week 1 as well. We'll try and stick to our Monday evenings the best we can. But yeah, hope you're all good. Hope you've all had a good summer, and we will see you next week. Goodbye all.